Hi, welcome to the Refugee Welcome Collective Lunch and Learn series. In these sessions, we aim to bring interesting and timely information to you, supporters of refugees. Whether you're a volunteer, community sponsor, resettlement agency staff, a local advocate, or just someone who's interested in learning more, we hope that you enjoy today's session, Integration, Welcome, and Inclusion. Refugee Welcome Collective collaborates with partners to provide in-depth training programs, weekly learning sessions, resources, and on-demand technical assistance for sponsors, practitioners at resettlement agencies, refugees paired with sponsors, community and institutional partners, and others to support quality community sponsorship programs across the United States. You can go to the next slide, please, Brianne. There you go. Just some housekeeping. As a reminder for everyone joining the call today, there's a control panel in your upper right-hand corner that will allow you to submit questions through the questions box. Please use the questions box, not the chat. There will be ample time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. Everyone on today's webinar is automatically muted. However, if you have any tech issues, please raise your hand through the control panel or submit a question in the questions box so we can try to assist you. Additionally, the presentation, any resources, and a recording will be sent to everyone following today's webinar. And this brings us to our presenter for today. You can go to the next slide. Our presenter for today is myself, Derek Feldman. I'm a program officer with Refugee Welcome Collective. And you can go ahead to the next slide, please. Yeah, so when it comes to integration, welcome, and inclusion, here are some training objectives for today's session. Number one, to understand common integration-related issues in community sponsorship, so just sort of some general information. My hope is for you to become more familiar with core and wraparound services that are related to integration. And then to learn some strategies to empower clients to reach those integration, self-sufficiency, family well-being goals. And before sort of we start in terms of integration, I do want everyone here in the audience to just sort of think to themselves some sort of sometimes what we call like blue sky thinking, or what are your real hopes and dreams, perhaps, for clients? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are the specific things that you can think of that to you would clearly feel like real integration, real welcome, real inclusion? What does that really look like in our sort of wildest dreams a bit? And so I just want us to start thinking about that, and then we're going to, proceed. But if you could just take maybe a second and think about what that really looks like, what would it feel like, and then we'll sort of dive into some specifics. Let's go to the next slide, please. And go ahead and click. Yeah, there you go. It should show up there. There you go. First thing really is to just try to define integration. What does it mean? And so I've used this quote, this sort of definition, and this is from Integration of Resettled Refugees, Essentials for Establishing a Resettlement Program and Fundamentals for Sustainable Resettlement Programs. This is through the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission on Refugees. I'll send you this link in the follow-up email so you can find it for yourself and some additional good information. But let's look at this definition. Integration is a dynamic two-way process that places demands on both the refugee and receiving community. Integrating refugees goes beyond ensuring that they are provided with basic needs and access to services. Integration requires that receiving states and civil society create a welcoming environment which supports refugees to achieve long-term economic stability and adjust to the new society, including fostering a sense of belonging and encouraging participation in their new communities. Vigorous integration programs enable refugees and their families to enjoy equality of rights and opportunities. What I like about this definition is that it really highlights that it is a dynamic two-way process. It is certainly the responsibility of refugees and newcomers to adapt and to become more proficient in navigating their community and their world. It goes beyond just simply, providing those basic needs and access of services to more of a real sense of welcome and inclusion and belonging. And that part really is sort of the responsibility of the community. What can the community do? Certainly, what can community sponsors, not only as members or representatives of the community, but also in advocates within your community to encourage welcome and to encourage newcomers. And so, what can we do to create a more welcoming, inclusive environment in which people will eventually feel like they truly belong and that they are truly welcome here. And so I think that's a really important thing to consider, and one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Some of the common sort of integration areas that we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of dive into each one so we can sort of look at specific examples. Integration, is a broad term, but we're going to kind of look at some specific ways or specific dimensions or specific areas in which this sort of integration, welcome, and belonging take place. Housing, language, specifically English here in the United States, transportation, employment, school and daycare, banking and being able to pay bills and that kind of thing, financial issues, healthcare, the sort of general cultural orientation, and some community connection we're going to dive into at the end there a bit. Let's go to the next slide. So talking about housing, so again, this is sort of an area, we can think of this as a specific type of area in which integration, self-sufficiency and family well-being goals may take place, through the lens of housing. So as we're thinking of integration, inclusion and belonging, we're thinking specifically as it relates to housing. And so we can think of some specific core services that sponsors may do by themselves. They may work in active collaboration with a local resettlement agency staff. So things like securing that decent, safe, and sanitary housing, provide furniture, household items, doing sort of a home setup, conduct a housing and safety orientation perhaps, and perhaps doing a next day home visit. Some additional wraparound services that are related to housing and related to integration are things like setting up utilities, setting up Wi-Fi, access to mail, making sure that clients know how to do that. And so some specific housing related goals that are related to integration, self-sufficiency, family well-being, things like permanent housing is established, and permanent housing usually refers to having at least a 1-year lease, that someone is leased up and that they have sort of a legal document, that lease that says that, they are housed, that they belong there as long as they pay their rent, that kind of thing. Understands how to pay rent and utilities, that they understand sort of general rental leasing, how it works here in the United States, your responsibilities and your rights as a tenant, understanding home ownership generally and what sort of steps might need to take place in order to start thinking about home ownership. And then also things like ending or starting utilities. So if they know that they're going to be ending a lease, in 3 months their lease is up and they've already thought about moving to a different apartment or a different house or moving in with someone else or whatever that may be, that they understand the whole process of how to, signing a lease and how to turn off their utilities so that they don't get paid or they don't get stuck with a bill even after they left the place, that they know how to start utilities, they know how to put down a deposit and put those utilities in their name at the new place to get the electricity going or the gas or get trash or things like that to go. That they understand that process. That's part of integrating and feeling that you have sort of some control over your own life, that you know how to do these things, and understands how to send and receive mail, obviously important. Let's go to the next slide. So these are kind of like the core services, sort of the basics. And then I want to talk about, what does inclusion look like when it comes to housing? And so this is a little bit of that, I hope it's not too far like blue sky thinking or too far, dreams and wishes. But really, this is what it would look like. I think that, what does our community have a responsibility to create a welcoming society? It's possibly at least the possibility of other people from some similar cultural backgrounds perhaps living near. We don't want to get into sort of feeling like, well, yeah, only Congolese refugees live in this apartment, and everyone who lives in this apartment are Congolese refugees, and that seems like that's not really conducive to kind of integration. It certainly is nice to have some people around who maybe you have some familiar language and some familiar cultural background and that kind of thing. So that's certainly nice to be able to do that, but it can sort of feel a bit like sort of unfortunately like a ghettoization or something like that, where like all people from one background or language all are living all in the same sort of apartment complex altogether or something like that. But at very least, someone feels comfortable and feels like there are some other people around, hopefully, that share some cultural background, some language. At an apartment complex, it would be welcoming and inclusive to see signs in multiple languages, specifically perhaps the client preferred language. So in Swahili or in Arabic or in Dari or Pashto, in the hallways or in other common areas. This is something that we as community members can encourage landlords and apartment complexes to advocate for our clients, so that if they're not already doing this kind of thing, that we can encourage them to consider doing these types of inclusive sort of behaviors to help with integration. Decorations or recognitions of cultural celebrations. These are small things, but important things for people to feel, welcome in that community. When, if you are a Muslim refugee and all you see are kind of Christmas decorations and no recognition of your own sort of culture or celebrations, that doesn't necessarily feel very welcoming, or that it's easy to feel welcome there. But when you do see these kinds of signs of respect and recognition of other people's cultures, that is much easier to feel really connected and welcome. Especially at apartment complexes and things like that, are there welcoming spaces for people to interact? People might, here's an opportunity perhaps to get to know neighbors. Kids play together. That's one of the great things about kids sometimes, is that they just can play, and lots of kids can interact. And perhaps these are opportunities for parents too, to be around, to be there to guide kids, but also to interact with other adults. Are there welcoming spaces, whether it's is there a little park or a play gym or something like that around for people to just say hi and get to know each other? And those little moments of smiles and waves and just saying hi, contribute to that overall sense of feeling welcome and feeling a part of the community. Let's go to the next slide. When it comes to language, and specifically English here in the United States, there are some core services that can be done, like English language program enrollment. There are some wraparound services that can be completed, like practicing English conversation, just hanging out with the family and talking is a great way. It's really important. Just being immersed into English and having someone try to communicate in some way is helpful for gaining those basic English skills. And it's also just nice. It feels connecting and that kind of thing. Community sponsor groups might do things like label common household items, both in whatever Arabic or Swahili, and also in English. And so that a client may, see a cabinet or rice or whatever it is, and also see the word in English. They may have a conversation about it. And so this is one way of picking up the language faster. Provide books, especially obviously, one language to English instructional type books, especially kids books are great. There are even sort of more oftentimes geared towards like young adults or teenagers even, but it can be really helpful for someone who's learning English as like a graphic novel or something like that, which then has some words but also has pictures. And so something like that can be really helpful. Maybe also television. I know people use television, a local TV as a way of picking up English, absolutely. So perhaps that's another thing that can be done. And then some specific language goals, like making sure that the client knows how to access interpretation services. So as simple as, I need an Arabic interpreter, Swahili interpreter. Being able to say that out loud to people. Also knowing how to call someone, a friend or family member, or a service that they can pay for, that's an app or something that's on their phone, so that they have the freedom and the ability to ask for an interpreter when they might need one. If the place can't provide an interpreter, do they have access to one themselves to help in that? And then to have some basic English skills also really is really helpful, just to have at very least some basics to be able to get around even without an interpreter. Let's go to the next slide, because now I want to again talk about sort of what does integration look like when it comes to language. And so these are things like community signs and flyers might be in multiple languages, including client preferred language. It just feels more welcoming and inclusive when there are signs and flyers and things like that in different languages for people who speak different languages. It shows a level of care and intention and interest in making sure that me as a client, that I am communicated with, that I am made aware to make sure, because I have some limited English. That customer service employees have proper training and access to interpretation and translation service. This is at restaurants, at Home Depot. I mean, any sort of thing that you can think of. This is a way for community members to really advocate for for the clients that we work with, for the newcomers and refugees here. So also, you might be there one time and you can sort of help bridge the gap. But what you really want to do is to help create a more welcoming environment. And so whether it's encouraging the owner of the business or manager of the business to consider making sure that their clients are thinking about and are aware of the fact that some clients may come in with limited English, and that they know how to how to deal with that. Not be rude and just say, oh, I can't deal with you because you can't speak English. But how can they be trained? What sort of resources can be put in place so that they can know what to do and how to be more welcoming and how to accommodate for those who might have lower levels of English and may need an interpreter or other things like that. As a community, are there free or affordable interpretation and translation services that are accessible to all? That's a citywide or a community-wide or statewide or perhaps even countrywide issues of advocacy, right? I mean, there are now laws and guidance in place when it comes to healthcare, for example, that all healthcare facilities that receive any sort of federal funding have to provide translation and interpretation services. Well, that's a wonderful thing, but that's an advocacy issue that happened because people asked for it and people pushed for it. And so, are there other things that we can do at the state or local level for other things, for other sort of just general customer service things? Is there an intentional sort of outreach to communities with limited English through video or audio? Whether it's community events that are, festivals, and it's nice out now, hopefully, where you live. And so, people are out more, and there are street fairs and all kinds of things like that are open to the public that perhaps, the city sponsors in some capacity. Is your city, being intentional about outreach to communicate to refugee and newcomer populations that have lower levels of English, through video and audio and signs and things like that? So that's what, and it is sort of the community responsibility generally that we want to encourage. And I want you all as, community sponsorship volunteers and sponsors to think about, how can you help advocate for this in your community more when it comes to language, when it comes to housing. So far, we'll go through each one. Let's go to the next one, please. When it comes to transportation, a really important part of feeling welcome and feeling part of being in control of your own life, right? That you can go where you want to go when you want to go. And so, core service might be things like providing transportation. The volunteer might provide that transportation, but there are lots of important wraparound services like providing public transportation instruction so that the client knows how to take the bus or the subway, or that they know information about a driver's permit, how to get a driver's permit and license, and get that instruction if that's something that they're interested in pursuing. That they have instruction on accessing other sort of ride shares or taxi or Lyft or Uber, for emergencies. Not an emergency in terms of going to the hospital or something. Hopefully call an ambulance if that. But other opportunities or other things that they might need to go to or want to go to or put in their budget as, it's worth it to take a Lyft or a taxi or something like that to this thing that I want to go to if, it's not easy to take public transportation at this time or for whatever reason. So sponsors and volunteers can make sure that clients have this information, that they can do this for themselves. That transportation goal is that they have consistent access to transportation, that they know they have, they know how to get public transportation, they know how to buy a ticket, and they know how to navigate the system that exists, that they know how to request a Lyft or an Uber or something like that, and they know how to express to someone where they're going and that kind of thing. They know how to pay for things. This is really important for someone to feel like they have control over their own life and that they can be a part of this community. Especially just honestly, life in the United States requires some transportation. It's not always easy to get everywhere from your house. Not every place is walkable. There are some things, and hopefully plenty, and that would be great, but that's just not always the case here in the United States. Transportation is pretty important. Let's go to the next slide and think about, again, what does it look like? What does integration look like? What is the community's responsibility for trying to become a welcoming society when it comes to transportation? Public transportation staff with adequate training regarding working with passengers with low levels of English. Some cities and some bus drivers and things I've seen are amazing at this, wonderful, and others not so much. So, what can we do to advocate in our own community so that public transportation staff are adequately trained regarding working with passengers with, low levels of English? Are there signs? Are there videos? Audio instructions in multiple languages. So whether they're on a subway or on the bus, are there signs? Is there video happening so that you can see, even if you don't fully understand the language, you can see something? Or are there audio instructions, especially in multiple languages, and hopefully in the client preferred language? Are rideshare and other transportation apps available in multiple languages? Is driver instruction and tests in multiple languages? This is an issue that comes up a lot in different states and in different cities, whether someone can take, get driver's instruction and whether they can take a test in other languages other than English. This may speed up the process of, being able to do that. And so this is an item of advocacy potentially that we can do to help in our communities. Let's go to the next slide. When it comes to employment, there are some core service like employment, enrollment in employment services. There are lots of important wraparound services that I think sponsors and volunteers are really well positioned to be able to do, like helping with creating a resume, helping with applying for jobs, help with sort of mock interview skills and things like that. These are great opportunities. And then specifically thinking about like some employment goals, full-time employment, obviously, is one important goal where clients can have wages that support themselves and their family. Understanding how to complete other sort of job-related paperwork, such as tax information for W-2s and benefits, health benefits and life insurance and things like that. Okay, so let's look at sort of the other side of that. Think about employment, honestly, as, this is something that people do for about 40 hours a week. It's about, that is a third of your life, 5 days a week, and maybe it's more. So it's a big chunk of your living existence here, especially in the United States, and working. And so, what does that work environment look like? Does it feel welcoming and inclusive? Are supervisors and team leaders trained on working with employees with limited English? Are there supervisors and team leaders that were former refugees themselves who may be able to sort of that lead a team that also speak multiple languages, that kind of thing? Are there signs, videos, audio instructions in multiple languages? Again, like, are there resources available to help clients with low levels of English? Are those resources in their preferred language? Are there common areas that recognize different cultural celebrations? Again, like, is there a water cooler area? Is there a lunchroom? Depending on the different employment type places. But those places where people gather, these are opportunities to talk and to make friends and to get to know people. Is everyone's cultural background and language, and are they celebrated? Are they encouraged? People to get to know each other and to learn from each other, or not? Or does it just feel like, no, this is just kind of what we do and this is what we care about, just deal with it. Those are different ways. So yeah, thank you. Keep moving to school and daycare. Again, some core services, school enrollment, some wraparound services, daycare and or after school program registration, whether, school tutoring. This is great stuff for sponsors and volunteers to help with. School bus instruction, where does the school bus stop at? Where does it drop off? Where does it pick up? Providing school supplies, backpacks, and other important school supplies. Some of those, kind of school or daycare related goals are that all school age children are registered for school, that, the daycare and or Head Start enrolled for those who may qualify, if needed, that clients, children are enrolled in after school programs if needed, so that so that mom or dad or both can work, and during normal work hours, kids may need to be part of an after school program. Let's go to the next slide. Excuse me. So what does it look like to really, to really have an inclusive community when it comes to school and daycare? And I've seen some schools be so wonderful and amazing at this. Things like, is there outreach to parents in multiple languages? Are there refugee and immigrant advocates within the schools? They're essentially like a family resource officer, or they're sort of a school counselor, but they're specifically trained and may, have some particular interest in working and advocating for refugee and immigrant children within the school. Are there inclusive books and activities from a range of different cultures that are available, so that kids see themselves reflected in the curriculum and discussions, and so that other kids get to become more familiar with different experiences and different backgrounds, and can be curious about each other and learning from each other? Are decorations, art, acknowledgement of celebrations from multiple cultures, is that inclusive as part of the children's experience in school and daycare? Are there specific orientations or introductions for new arrival refugee students and families? Again, like I said, I've seen some amazing things happen where, because refugee students arrive all throughout the year, right, and throughout the school year, so they might come in, in the middle of November, and be enrolled in school. And I've seen some wonderful teachers and school administrative staff create specific orientations and introductions to refugee kiddos and parents, to get to know their school and to get to know teachers and things like that. Let's go to the next slide. Banking, financial issues, bills, all important stuff in terms of feeling integrated into society. There are some specific core services like providing pocket money, develop and implement a resettlement service plan. There are obviously lots of other wraparound services related to financial issues, like assistance with setting up and managing a bank account, providing budget and financial management assistance, instructions for paying bills, how to send a money order, how to pay with a credit card or debit card online, or going into a place to, for your phone bill, or bill pay directly, from your account to pay the electric bill or something like that. But person needs instruction if they've never done that kind of thing before. And so this is great stuff that sponsors and volunteers can work with clients to do. Connecting with emergency community services, LAHEAP, and other weatherization things, emergency heating assistance, that kind of thing. Other, banking and sort of bills specific goals, is, that the person has established a bank account. They have a bank account. that they understand how to pay those bills, that they can access emergency community services if needed. Let's go to the next slide and think about what that looks like when it comes to sort of financial issues. What does inclusion look like? So accessibility of banking services in multiple languages, when you go to the local bank, even just to first set up an account, are they welcoming? Do they say, oh yeah, we have a language line that we can use, no problem, come sit down here at my desk and let me call for an interpreter for you. That is a wonderful thing to see happen, and more likely for clients to feel welcome in that community than a bank or a bank teller, just saying like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure. If you don't speak English, I'm not sure we can help you. Totally different experiences. Bill pay options in multiple languages, signs, videos, audio instructions in multiple languages. These are the kinds of things related to banking or financial things that would be more inclusive. Go ahead to the next slide. When it comes to healthcare, there are some core services like an application for medical assistance or Medicaid. There's the refugee health screening, some specific wraparound services like connecting with a primary care physician, help with setting healthcare appointments, connect with mental health supports if needed, some specific healthcare goals like has Medicaid or other health insurance established, that they've completed the refugee health screening, that they've received that they understand how to make healthcare appointments and how to keep that for themselves, and can access mental health supports. And again, let's go to the next slide to look at thinking about what does integration look like, and what is kind of our responsibility as a community when it comes to healthcare, is that they're adequately trained employees to work with clients with low levels of English. And generally, because there's been a big push at the national level to require that healthcare services provide interpretation and translation services. This is one way that it has certainly gotten better. But if you've had the same sort of experiences that I'm aware of, that this isn't always the case, or at least some of the employees, perhaps at those reception desks and things like that, aren't always great at being welcoming to clients. Sometimes they're in a rush or things like that. Sometimes it really is even just making sure that they're knowledgeable about the laws and company guidelines regarding access to an interpreter and translation services. Unfortunately, that still happens, that you still have to sort of advocate for clients. Are there signs, videos, audio instructions in multiple languages? Whether that's, they've been prescribed a medication, do they fully understand, especially, if it involves taking a shot or some other sort of medical equipment that might be complicated to set up. Is there a person? Are there signs? Are there videos? Are there audio instructions on how to actually do that, and to make sure that the client really feels comfortable and knows how to provide themselves with that medical equipment or medication or something like that. When you go into the hospital or medical facility, what does it look like? Are there community boards? Are there decorations? Are there artwork reflecting multiple cultures, or not? And I think all of us have experienced that, but perhaps it is a bit of we're all swimming in the water of American culture, and so perhaps we miss that, or don't realize that other people from other cultures may experience it as not being very welcoming when there isn't a diversity of look and feel and people and that kind of thing reflected in decoration, artwork, other events and things like that. Let's go to the next slide. When it comes to cultural orientation, we provide, one is to provide that cultural orientation. There are additional wraparound services, help with digital technology and literacy, help with health and hygiene issues, explain the role of the resettlement agency, the general safety instruction, general explanation of U.S. law. Some goals might be things like that, that the client feels confident with digital technology, that they feel familiar with U.S. hygiene standards, that they understand the roles of the resettlement agency, that they're familiar with safety measures at home and away from home, and that they generally have a basic understanding of U.S. law. Let's go to the next slide. And this is community connection, another really important part of integration. There some wraparound services relate to, facilitating a connection with local ethnic community-based organizations and or desired religious community. Community guidance, where's the local park and where's the library and those kinds of things. Help with getting a library card might be one important one. Help with connecting to physical activity, opportunities like parks and soccer clubs and gyms, things like that. And then when, some of those goals are things like establish connection within ECBO, an ethnic community-based organization and or religious community, that they feel confident navigating their community and that they're familiar with opportunities for physical exercise. Let's go to the last one here. Go ahead, yeah. These are just some thoughts on, the importance of empowering clients. So these are some ideas to really kind of keep in mind. Recognize that clients are resilient and capable of becoming self-sufficient, that they are capable of integrating into the community. We know it's hard, but that they absolutely can do this. That self-sufficiency, knowledge, and skills are difficult, and that it's okay to make mistakes. No one's perfect, and it's okay when someone does something that you personally don't agree with, that you think is a mistake. That's their life, and it's okay. We all learn from mistakes, and we all eventually get better at things, and this is normal. Clients are best suited to make decisions about their own lives. Let's always remember that. You might have some knowledge and wisdom, of course, and you can share that with clients, but in the end, they really have all of the context for themselves and their life to be able to, they're the ones responsible for their own life, and they're the ones best suited to make decisions about their own lives. And you can focus on scaffolding skills and skill building. So all those little steps, not necessarily just thinking of the big picture, but each individual little step is important to be able to get to those bigger issues. To always utilize additional supports, including other community members, programs, and tools. And then the last one, extremely important, just always maintain appropriate boundaries. When you don't do that, or when you take on too much responsibility, you're really hindering clients from learning the things that they need to learn to be able to take care of themselves. So like, for example, when it comes to transportation, it's just not sustainable for you to drive them everywhere they ever need to go. A client needs the freedom to be able to decide for themselves where they want to go, and so that they can do things for themselves. And so understanding how to take public transportation, understanding how to get a cab, or something like that is important for them to really become sort of more masterful of their environment and being able to make decisions for themselves about where they want to go and what they want to do. We do have a few minutes, so I do want to open it up to questions. If there are any questions in the questions tab, I will answer those. I don't see any here right now, but you do have another minute or two to go ahead and put anything in the questions tab if you would like me to answer anything. Otherwise, it's not a problem. I'll just wait here for just a minute and see if any questions come up. And if not, again, no problem at all. I do want to just go ahead and thank everyone for coming. Thank you for attending today's RWC Lunch and Learn. We would, if you go to the next slide, please, Brianne, we would like to hear from you and receive any feedback on today's Lunch and Learn and hear your suggestion for future Lunch and Learn topics. We ask that you take a moment to complete a survey. Use your phone or follow the QR code on the screen, or you can follow the link in the chat, which Brianne, I think, just put in the chat. And we really do appreciate you taking the time to do that. We look forward to hearing from you. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to view a recording of today's webinar, and please feel free to share that with other people. And yeah, I don't see any questions, so it's no problem at all. I'll just go ahead and say, on behalf of Refugee Welcome Collective, thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.